Hello, and welcome to our weekly LinkedIn Live leadership series, Voices of Leadership. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Kathy Eastwood, the CEO and founder of E=Y. Each week, we explore the fascinating world of leadership featuring voices from different generations, industries, and backgrounds. It's the team's job to deliver results. It's the leader's job is to make sure it happens. And there's a repeatable formula for that. The E3 leadership code: express plus engage and execute, all powered by emotional qualities. So I love talking to different leaders that understand that fundamentally and put it into practice in their own way, because there's no one way to lead. So before I introduce our guest, please let us know where you're dialing in from. Use this as an opportunity to network, share your LinkedIn profile. But we're very excited to introduce our guest today. She is someone who sits and works at the intersection of purpose, clarity, and conscious business. Jenn T is the founder and CEO of Publish Your Purpose and the author of Publish Your Purpose, the book. And her newest book, Promote Your Purpose, which comes out today, or actually came out this week, right? Wednesday. So Jenn and I actually connected through the world of conscious capitalism, and we have a shared purpose that business can and should create beyond just profit. And that belief shapes that leaders, really help. And where I think, Jenn, you really come at it is helping leaders share their stories, right? Bring them into the world. Mm-hmm. I also loved, and I have to point this out, that Publish Your Purpose is a certified B Corp, right? Yes. Absolutely love it. Mm-hmm. And she's always working with purpose-driven leaders. I hear a theme coming in for today. It's going to be around purpose. So leaders that know their work matters and want to communicate it with clarity and intention, so it actually reaches the people that matter. So on a personal note, and everyone kind of knows that I've been writing the book and it's coming out, but Jenn and the team at PYP have actually been guiding me through, and they're going to be publishing my book. Mm-hmm. So this conversation is highly and especially meaningful for me. So first off, Jenn, thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations on the release of your latest book.
Thank you. I'm so excited for this conversation. I feel like anytime we talk, it's always something good, deep, and juicy, just because we're so aligned. So when you invited me, I was like, obviously, yes, let's do this. Thank you. I'm excited for this.
Great. So I mentioned two of your books, Publish and Promote Your Purpose. Mm-hmm. Those are not your first books, correct?
They're
so
not.
How many books have you written personally?
My book, Promote Your Purpose, is number 8.
Wow.
Yes.
Outstanding. And then, I am actually going to take a pause there. How did you get started with building your publishing business? Because I don't think your first book was a business book, was it?
Yeah, yes. I'll give the try to be the abridged version of this, because at the time it was not linear, but I can tell it in a linear way at this point. But my former life prior to publishing was I was a consultant, and I worked with marketing and communications within Fortune companies that were insurance and financial services. So those are like my clients. And I just kept going into these, into these settings, and they were like, where's your book? It was just kind of like a given. So I was facilitating workshops or focus groups or keynotes and things like that. And so that kind of was the starting point. And so I ended up writing 4 books around that subject matter. And then it was kind of in my second and third book, I had a lot of people in my network saying, well, how did you know how to write it? Or how did you know how to publish it? And at the time I was just kind of bumping my way through the dark and really didn't know what I was doing. It was certainly not intentional. It was not strategic. It was just trying to figure out how to do it. And then by the time I was on my 4th one, I'm like, I think I got something here. I think I know what I'm doing now. And that's when I ended up starting Publish Your Purpose back in 2015.
Outstanding. And how many books has Publish Your Purpose helped publish now?
We are over the 250 mark. Yeah.
Outstanding.
Love it. Yes.
Yeah.
And I love every book that we have worked on.
So let's talk about purpose, because that obviously is core to who you are. And, when you talk about purpose, you don't talk about it as something as aspirational. You really talk about it as being strategic and operational in nature. So when did you realize that? When did that come to fruition for you to say, this isn't about inspiration. This is something leaders must intentionally build into what they're doing?
I think it's almost like hard to pull that apart. Like I was thinking about this in advance, and I think it's hard to pull it apart because I feel like it is so just like the fabric of my DNA, where it just seems like and I don't want to say obvious because I don't want that to be diminishing, but like it seems like an absolute imperative and a given that you have to know what your purpose here is in life, whether it's your personal life, your professional life. Ideally, there's some kind of intersectionality between personal and professional and it's not siloed. But I think about even like our B Corp certification. And I've had people ask me, like, well, why would you be certified as a B Corp? I'm like, why wouldn't I be? Like, I feel like that's just how business should run. Like, business should inherently be in the business of doing good for your stakeholders, doing good for your employees, doing good for the world, the earth, the environment, whatever the thing is. And so I feel like it's kind of hard to like figure out, all right, what does that actually look like? So if we have a purpose, how do we as leaders show up in wherever we're leading and make sure that our purpose is front and center? Because I think for most people it's the struggle of like it's a big question, right? Like there's so many books written about purpose and like finding your purpose and all of these a lot of times spiritual text or religious text, because like we're here for some greater reason, and trying to translate that into a operational leadership capacity, like working within a corporation, almost feels like complete opposite ends of a spectrum. But the reality is we're all the same person no matter where we show up. So I feel like it's a kind of like a thread that has to be unraveled quite a bit.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I'm really excited. We've got a couple of people calling in. We've got someone from Mexico. Ralph's excited to be here. We got Dr.
Gavin.
Madhav, who's from India, and Gavin, right? Gavin Watson, so good to hear you. I think he's the one that actually introduced us.
He is, and his book, Altruistic Business, is a wonderful book that people should check out too, especially if they're into this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's interesting because that purpose driven from a business perspective, it's something that, and you know this because you've been involved in my book, but you have to be able to express an end vision. Mm-hmm. And you said something before we came on today that I think is so strong. It becomes your North Star, mm-hmm. right? And when you think about how you bring something to life, because when you talk about books, if it's a project, whatever it is, you're bringing something to life. Mm-hmm. How many times do you see that people they get distracted and they kind of go off track?
All the time. I feel like it's like every day people are kind of going off course. And that's part of why I wrote this new book, Promote Your Purpose, because it's about figuring out what your North Star is. I don't actually use that exact language in the book, but it's very much figuring out your vision, your impact, your why, like the things that really matter. Because when we know what that is, every other decision along our path is more clear. So if I know that my North Star at the end of the day is to help get stories out in this world, I could look at that in a very narrow capacity and say that means only through the act of publishing. But the reality is that, yes, my business publishes books, but the reality is that stories come out in so many different ways. Yeah. And if my vision is really narrow for you to say, okay, Kathy, the only way that your story matters is if we're putting it in a book. The reality is that you standing on a stage, us having this conversation right now, you having a conversation with your neighbor when you're bringing up your recycling bin, all of those are like mini moments and acts of leadership. And when we have that purpose and that North Star, we know like, okay, my vision for this world is that we could be better if more voices were heard, more varied, diverse perspectives, lived experiences were heard. If I know that that's my North Star, every interaction I have, that kind of just like seeps through because it's just part of my DNA and who I am, versus having it be like, oh, my purpose is this thing on the shelf that lives over here, and I'm like over here as a person. Like we can't have that disconnect between the two. Otherwise, there really is no North Star at that point.
Yeah. And do you like how I thought about it is you want to express the end vision, right? So you'll hear me talk about it, express that end vision and that North Star. So as you're saying, it may not be linear, right? The path to get there. And if you start to go, oh, this is my next logical step, I just want to write, a book, or I just want to do, get on a podcast, whatever it is, you may miss the bigger picture to get to that end vision.
You're right. Yeah. Because we are not, books are linear, But books are not written linear. Life is not lived in like chronologically, sure, but not really in a linear fashion, right? If we look at anyone's career journey or leadership journey or anything like that, it is a zigzag. It is all over the place. In hindsight, we can make it make sense and fit it into a story that's easier to consume for people. But the reality is, at the time, you're kind of like bouncing all around.
Yep. So North Star is the direction, right? Where you want to get to. So making decisions on what that all means. Do you find that it's also the thing to come back to when you get off path, off target, or off path?
Yeah. Yes, because if you have clarity around what your purpose is, and it doesn't have to be this big, profound purpose, right? Like, I think that's the other thing that people get hung up on, is that purpose can be something that's small and intimate to you, but you have to know what it is. It doesn't mean that you need to be standing on a stage, telling 10,000 people that this is what your purpose is. It really, there's a whole spectrum of that. And when you're in the process of writing a book, for example, which is not an easy task, there are moments where you're like, why on earth did I think this was a good idea? Like, who am I to be sharing this content? Like, who said I was good enough to be a writer? Who said I can step into this role as an author? And all of these, like, really nasty thoughts come in that are self-inflicted, rarely coming from other people. It's usually internally. And when we can say, that's right, because I'm doing this because I want the transformation for this reader to happen in this particular way. When we know what that is, we can say, all right, enough about my ego. Let me step aside. This is not about me. This is about who I'm serving. And then we can kind of like move through that emotional hump a lot faster than if we don't know what that answer is at all.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I'm one of those people, we've had conversations about it, right? It's scary to put, your story out there for the whole world to see.
It is. It is. And my 8th book came out on Tuesday, and it's still terrifying, right? Like, it doesn't go away either. Like I know how the process works. I've done it hundreds of times with other people, but it still doesn't take away that fear of being seen. And I think that's where everybody really struggles, is that we want visibility. We're on social media and we're like, yes, look at us. We're wise. We can help you. We have all these things, but there's still an inherent fear of what that visibility brings. And I think that's where almost everyone gets stuck.
Yeah. And do you find, with promotion, right? So a lot of people I find that are in that conscious sphere of leadership, caring, they tend to be humble, right? Because they're coming from the heart.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find they struggle at times to promote their purpose and get it out there? And is that a lot of what this book is helping people realize that? Tell us more.
That is exactly the book. That is like the book to a T. I love how you framed that. People who have a natural marketing ability, like the people who are maybe just walk into a room charismatically and they're like, I have this book, it's amazing, and here's 5 reasons why you should buy it. That person is going to struggle less with the day-to-day requirements of promoting our book, which is why I didn't call it market your purpose. I called it promote, because promote feels a little softer. It feels a little more gentle. It doesn't feel like it has to be in this framework. But the reality is that in order for a book to be successful, in order for you to be successful as a thought leader, like, you can, like, my book, like, yes, it's for authors, but you could remove author and everything still applies. Like, you can follow it and be a thought leader, and you don't need to be writing a book. But if we look at how people kind of move their way through that process, it is, oh shoot, some expert told me that I have to launch a TikTok channel, or, oh, someone said I have to hire a PR firm for $10,000 a month, or insert hundreds of different of examples here. The reality is that if we can just show up in whatever way that looks like for us. I had 2 calls earlier today, and in both of those conversations, I said, let me follow up and send you the ebook version of Promote Your Purpose, because I think it's going to be like what helps kind of like move you in the right direction. That might lead to some other type of business down the road. It might not, and that's okay, because for me, the purpose of this is to get this work out there to help more people get their message out there. So that's because I have clarity on what my goals are and what my purpose is. So that might be what all my marketing strategy is. And every individual conversation I have, I give the book away for free. That might be what the strategy is. It doesn't mean I have to be taking stages and being in front of 5,000 people at a time in order for that to be successful. So the more, as thought leaders, the more intentional we can be about how are we defining success, and what metrics matter to us, not necessarily someone said in order for you to be a successful author, you have to sell 100,000 copies, or you're a successful speaker only if you charge $30,000 for a keynote. None of that matters. None of that's relevant. It's a matter of what is aligned for you in your values. And the more we can kind of uncover our each individual kind of unique gifts and ways to approach it, all of marketing and promotion is so much easier. So much easier.
Well, and you're using, so besides purpose, you're using values are coming into this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what do you value?
Mm-hmm.
But you didn't quite say the word, but what I was hearing is you got to find what's authentic for you.
Yeah.
Right, because you don't. I assume you're not telling people like well, you said it. You're not telling them they have to go do something that doesn't fit, doesn't feel good, right? We shouldn't be doing anything that doesn't fit.
No. And if you love doing this LinkedIn Live every Friday, which I love doing live things because there's no editing. It's like you get what you get. Like I love live. There are a lot of people who are terrified over doing a live video. So if you and I are in a strategy call and we're working together and I say, hey, Kathy, in order for your book to be successful, I need you to be live every single Friday. And you are terrified of going live. How is that going to help? How is that like the energy and the angst and the emotions that you're bringing to that conversation are going to see through, and that energy exchange is not going to happen versus someone who shows up and loves being live, loves being in this environment, talking to other people, brainstorming. That shows, and that power kind of like comes through, and that could be the anchor of the entire strategy and nothing more. And that's okay. So we have to give ourselves permission to get out of this like hustle culture. I think of like bro culture. Like we got to get out of this, like, in order to be successful, you have to be doing these 10 things. You have to get up at 5 a.m. You have to be part of the 5 a.m. Like if that is not your natural state energetically, then don't go there, right? Like go where you feel naturally energized.
Yeah, and it's that adding value and driving towards your purpose. You said something, and Ralph Menemeyer added something here. Energy out is energy in.
Mm-hmm.
It's not linear. You've used this word over and over again. Like our life is not linear. Our energy is not linear. Sometimes you put that energy out in one direction, and it comes back in a weird way. I've had people say to me, they're like, "Well, why did you spend time with this person? They're not going to, be a coach. You're not going to be that coach." And I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm adding value. I want to elevate every person I can. It will come back in some shape or form. If I'm doing the right thing, then it will. And I think that's why it's so important that we know what our why is and what our purpose. And I often ask people, if you weren't getting paid, what would you do?
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we can think in that way, that motivates us, gets us up. We work harder. We work more strict. Well, some people will argue that it's not about working harder, right? It's about working more strategically and that energy coming back.
Yeah.
When you think about it.
Yeah. And it's such a great question to ask too, because, I forget, I was watching some random show the other day, and someone was asking like, oh, well, how many 2-week vacations do I get a year? Like someone who's like so disconnected from like reality. And it took me a second. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I forgot that like people have 2 weeks vacation and that's all they have. It doesn't even, I've been in my own business for so long. It doesn't even cross my mind that that's how people live. And people have to live within the constraints that are provided to them. So it's almost like, how do you find so if that constraint, because it works, corporate settings work really well for a lot of people, and they don't work well for other people. So it's the more of that uncovering and unearthing of our own purpose, we can decide, okay, do the constraints of this particular path work for me? If they do, great, keep going. But if you are kind of like feeling that resistance because you're in a corporate environment and you really just don't belong there, having that purpose and that why can help you start to figure out what those first next steps are going to be to getting to that area where you do feel more kind of enlightened and alive.
Yeah. So you talked about, I heard you say, it wasn't linear. I was like, oh, I have something, I can share it. It was the purpose. But what really got you into starting the business itself? And this was something you and I talked about, which was probably a big part of me saying, yes, I want you to bring my gift out to the world. But that you really are very transparent. You're open. You're not trying to hide anything.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
And was that an experience you had in life and you just said, no, I want to make this process as easy as possible for people?
Yeah. And the relevant to this conversation, the story that I will share is that I also wrote a memoir. It's called House on Fire. It came out in 2020. It captures age 6 to 36. So it's a 30-year window of time where there's a lot of drama, a lot of trauma. It's a heavy read. So I will just kind of preface with that. However, in that, I kind of talk about the birth of PYP because I was in such a state of dissociation, stress, family conflict. It was like a pot that was like I was like a hairpin trigger from like I mean like everything. And yet on the outside everybody looked in and they're like, "Oh wow, she's so successful" because I was winning awards everywhere like so it's like where you put your energy, right? Like my home life was absolutely collapsing and falling apart in some of the worst ways possible. And publicly everybody's like because then when the book came out everybody's like, "Oh my god, that was happening and I knew you." I'm like, "Oh yeah. Oh yeah." But so there's this moment where I was doing a puzzle. And so, because I'm like, I just need to like drown out the chaos around me. So I'm doing a puzzle. My son's in the other room, on headphones. My ex is in the other room. My daughter's upstairs screaming. Like it's a lot of chaos. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, I have a voice and I know how to use it. And I have no issue with standing on a stage and talking about things. But I was like, I'm not on the stage talking about the things that really matter to me right now, personally, because I was in a community of, I would say like parents, but like caregivers that have a child with really severe, significant mental illness that nobody fully understands. And I was watching the conversations among these other caregivers and how much despair and defeat and hopelessness existed in there. And I was thinking, well, what am I doing over here? Like, yes, I'm also in the same despair, same hopelessness, but I also have the tools and the resources and the access to take my despair and do something with it. And so that was a huge catalyst for why I started PYP, because I was like, wow, there are so many people who are struggling so silently behind the scenes with so many different things, and they don't know how to get out of it, and they don't know how to talk about it, because the more we talk about things, the less charged they become. And so that was like a big piece, in addition to like the story that I am often telling, because there is a whole bunch of other stuff that was happening too. But that was like really like sitting there doing that. It was like an aha moment one day where I was like, oh wow, like what, like why haven't I started this yet? It was like just getting hit with a ton of bricks, and that was like a huge piece of my purpose. Where I'm like, okay, now I think I know clearly what my purpose is.
Do you think everyone has a book in them?
I do. Or everyone has a story in them. Everyone has a story that's worth sharing. I'll put it that way. Because I think a lot of people have the idea of a book, or just the idea of a book just doesn't even, they're like, I don't even want to have a book. But they might have a really good story that they share at a cocktail party, or when they're meeting somebody for the first time, or on a first date or something like that. But I don't like to put the pressure, because I genuinely do think everyone has a book in them, but I don't want to put the pressure on people to have to feel like they have to have a book in them to have value.
I like that a lot. And it's interesting, as you were saying, that everyone has a story. It's with the leadership, I feel it's so important to be an authentic leader. You have to know what your story is, right? So, how much has it changed you to be able to share what was going on during that time, to bring that forth? Because that's defined you. I mean, it is who you are, why you show up the way you do, and it probably inspires and helps others find their voice. Is that a fair statement?
It's my hope. I've definitely had a lot of our authors who, on their own, without my knowledge, go off and read my memoir, and then they come back and they're like, "Oh my god, I understand you more now." And every time it happens, it still happens. I had somebody recently say this, and like it's almost like my entire soul drops out of my body for a minute. It's like that panicked, anxious moment of like, what somebody really know, because I don't hide anything. Like it is very raw and it's all the details. I do not sugarcoat anything. And then when I'm like, oh my God, like, because that's the visibility I was talking about before, where I'm like, oh wow, now I'm really seen. Because I can like, because we're curated to a certain degree, right? But then when you read someone's memoir or someone's story or someone's nonfiction book, like it is a way deeper understanding of knowing that person. And so I think like at the time when everything was like really, really bad, which was like 2014 to 2017 or so. And also like very, I don't want to say peak of my career because I was young, but like lots of goodness happening too. A lot of my team had no idea what was going on. They knew I needed space. And I was just like, and I went like, I had a whole 6-month period of time in 2018 where I didn't sleep. You don't realize how your body doesn't function when you can't sleep for like 6 months, and tried every possible Eastern, Western, everything, and nothing could help. And that's when the team had to be kind of clued in on how bad things were, because they were like, oh, wow, she can't even, like, I couldn't even function as a leader. And so I had to like hand the reins over to the team to be like, I'm going to just let go. And I'm not religious, but let go, let God, and be like, we're just going to see if the business survives another day, because it was just so bad at the time. But I think letting them in and seeing that, I think really helped, because they're like, oh, wow, okay, like she's just like we're all the same, you know, like there's no hierarchy here.
So you did finally tell them now that you've gone through this, would you have told them earlier?
I feel like maybe, but I don't know, because I'm trying to think of like how someone might be hearing this too. And I don't want that pressure to be put on somebody. So like if you're going through something really difficult at home, I don't want you to feel like you have to tell your team or tell people, stakeholders around you, because sometimes it's not appropriate.
Yeah, that's fair.
And at the same time, it like sometimes when this stuff is just so compounding and so much, like you're in survival mode, your nervous system is so dysregulated, like you can barely function. So the idea of having an honest conversation, I think, could be really challenging. I think the short answer is yes. I think people knowing ahead of time would be very helpful, but I think the reality of actually doing that would be where people would struggle the most, myself included.
Yeah, because I mean, at that point, you have to have trust with your team, and you have to know that they have your back. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of people in the business world that don't feel someone has their back, right? And I think that's where I spend a lot of time, is trying to help teams create that trust and that psychological safety. But as you know yourself better, and other people can understand, then they know your intent. And so when you're having a bad day, then they can have your back.
Yeah. And that's why it goes back to purpose. Because like if you know what your purpose is, you're going to show up differently in different environments. And I think it builds trust a little bit faster, even, because then people see, oh, she is just having a bad day, or she's having a bad day. How can I support her in this way? Or, and it also makes you more in reverse, where I can see if someone on the team is having a bad day and give them permission to like just go take a nap, like walk away. Like you don't have to be tied to your desk. Like, so having it be like a two-way street. So it, and you know, I know that there's like arguments to be made about like flat organizations and no hierarchy and all the things, but like if we can look at each other as equals, and at the very least, regardless of what title, who's paying whose title is what, if we can at least be looking at each other as equals, I think that alone can change that dynamic of trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we talk about the E3 leadership code, right? We talk about express the end vision, right? You talked about the North Star, engaging your people. But one of the big pieces is the emotional intelligence. That's what builds trust. That's what makes a business conscious. That's what makes, you know, us want to show up and do more than just the bare minimum.
Yeah. And it makes it hard, because when you're when you're operating with emotional intelligence, everything seems to be more difficult at times. Like I think if I weren't a B Corp and conscious capitalism wasn't like just in my veins, I think life would be a little bit easier sometimes, where it'd be like, oh, I just get up, this is, the business has to make money this way. Like if I were just like very black and white, very linear, like this is what a business does. A business generates profit. Like I can't even wrap my head around a world that would look like, but it does seem like sometimes it would make decision making a little bit easier, because it's black and white. There's no gray. It's like, does this make money? Yes, good, do it. If it doesn't, nope, don't do it. Versus when you're so, everything is about meaning and impact and intent, you do make different decisions that are not going to be profitable decisions, or you do make decisions that are going to have some kind of adverse impact on the bottom line down the road. But as long as like that's your intent and you're good and comfortable with that, then I think that's the like, and that's the way I think businesses should be run. I think not everything has to be profitable, and at the same time, it still can be profitable.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in fact, you know, conscious businesses are typically 23% more profitable when they put their people first of doing the right things. And that human approach, like a lot of people say to me, oh, this feel good it's a nice to have, but actually it's not. It is what you need to have a high performing culture.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because if you went with that, okay, I'm just going to make the decisions, we're going to just do it, not worry about the people, I'm going to do what is going to make the most money. You don't have that team surrounding you to have your back then. Because if you were to get sick in that environment,
they'd all jump. They're like, we're out.
Yeah, exactly. No one's going to be able to pick up the pieces. They're not emotionally charged, right? It all is intertwined of showing up with your heart is the best way to run a business, the best way to be a leader. When we bring the most value to society.
Yeah. And just bring our whole selves to the workplace. Like it seems like, I remember, obviously there's backlash around DEI initiatives and things like that and all the stuff happening right now. But I remember like 10, 15 years ago, where even just the phrase of like bring your whole self to work was like a thing that people couldn't wrap their head around. And it just seems like so obvious of like, why wouldn't we want to bring our whole selves to work? Why wouldn't we want everyone to kind of have a general flair of who we are? Like, I don't want to be working with someone where I don't know what their hobbies are, what their interests are, what they're doing outside of working, because it's not about just being an employer. Like they're like, it's our lives, right? And again, purpose, like it has to be all of the places, not just in the workplace or how you are in one place. Like to me, I always like, I pride myself on really believing that I'm the same person no matter what environment you're going to catch me in.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy because sometimes you're in a mood and you don't want to talk to people.
Yep.
But generally, like I'm a chatty person. I talk to anybody. I don't need a reason. I don't even care what the conversation. Like I just love talking to people. But if I'm like charismatic and entertaining in one way, and then you run into me on the street and I'm an absolute miserable human being, there's that disconnect. And people are going to be like, what's up with Kathy? Like, she just doesn't seem genuine or sincere, authentic, or all those words that really matter for people to trust us.
Absolutely. And that's a lot of what we've done at E equals Y is we try to give people a voice to understand who they are and then to share it, right? So we call it the E3 leadership profile. But why do you get up in the morning? What is your mission? What is your purpose? What are your values? And then share that, because it's probably easy for folks like you and I that love to chat, right? We're chatty and it's easier, but for others, it's not easy to find that voice, right? So the fact that you're giving people that platform to share their voice is really powerful.
Because everyone deserves their voice to be heard. It shouldn't be gate kept. It shouldn't be for the elite. It shouldn't be for the select few. And the reality, if we look at books in particular, like it's been, there's a lot of gatekeeping that happens with books, and it doesn't have to, right? And it's changed obviously in the last few years. And not everyone is comfortable in kind of like really expressing what's on their mind and on their heart. And the more we can kind of just like open the space for people to, like, you don't have to have it figured out. You don't have to say it articulately. Like, just hit me with whatever the thing is and we'll figure it out together. It doesn't have to be super complicated either. Just find one trusted person around you where you can just kind of start to like baby step sharing a little more of like kind of what you're thinking about, or even write it down in a journal, right? Like just get something to get the energy flowing.
Yep, absolutely. Picurioli had some nice words to say, right? Like purpose really isn't just something you do, it's why you exist in the space you occupy. Absolutely. And when we can, I have a phrase all my friends know, Jen, what would you love? Right? Like when we can't make a decision or we don't know what to do, or we're stepping on everyone's toes because no one wants to hurt, I'm like, what would you love? And that just makes our decisions, because then it's coming from the heart and it's just like, all right, let's go with it. Sounds good. You love something so much, I can get on board with it.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of times people are a little bit neutral about things. So like if we're trying to make a decision and you say you love this and I'm fine either way, let's do it. I'd rather you be happy with what you love versus us both being like, meh about it.
Yeah.
I love that.
I like that. All right. Any parting advice? We're already at you and I could probably talk for all day. Any parting advice for folks that are just kind of hearing all this, purpose driven, whether it's being a thought leader, writing a book, whatever it is? What's your parting thoughts for our audience?
I would say, in the words of Nike, just do it. And not necessarily from like a action oriented, like has to be out there in the world. But like if you're really just trying to figure out what your purpose is and why you're here and why you exist, there's obviously books, including my own, that talk about this, but there's a lot of materials and resources. And at the end of the day, I think it's just sitting down with ourselves and just really, like you said, like what gets you up in the morning, you know, like what, like just really start to like ask yourself some of those very simple but yet complicated, complex questions. And that can start to at least help you take baby steps. I don't want people to feel like they have to go from like, I feel kind of lost and a little directionless to I know exactly what my North Star. Like it's not going to happen overnight. Like you got to do a little bit of soul searching for it, but just start. Like just start taking those baby steps and you know do whatever feels aligned and values driven for you to kind of get there and try to drown out the noise of other people who are telling you to have to do it faster or better or whatever the case may be.
I love it. Well, Jenn, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for guiding my purpose and bringing that to life. So there will be more to come on that one. For those that don't know, the book is going to be the E3 Leadership Code, The Human Approach to High Performance. So you can hear a lot of the words we've talked about today, but it has been a journey, and it is about publishing your purpose and now promoting it.
Yes.
So, Jenn, thanks so much. Appreciate it. And for those that have joined, we appreciate it. And you can learn more about Jenn at publishyourpurpose.com. And have a great weekend, all. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kathy.